Okay, so the Middle East is always, well, complicated, right? But President Trump's recent trip to Saudi Arabia, it's thrown a couple of big ideas into the mix.
Yeah, definitely. We're hearing talk about a potential new angle on Iran and also really pushing to expand the Abraham Accord.
Exactly, two huge areas. And it's fascinating seeing this diplomacy push up against all the deep-seated issues in the region.
It really is. These statements he made specifically at the Gulf Cooperation Council meeting in Riyadh. This was Wednesday, May 14th. Fox News reported on it. They outlined some, well, let's just say ambitious goals.
Right. So for this deep dive, let's try to get to the heart of what he's actually aiming for with Iran and the Accords. Based on what he said, what are the core objectives and maybe what are the first steps or conditions we're seeing?
Sounds good. Where should we start? Iran.
Yeah, let's start with Iran. He actually said, quote, "I want to make a deal with Iran. I want to do something if possible." That sounds, well, it sounds like an opening, doesn't it?
It does on the surface, but almost in the same breath, he laid down some very, very firm conditions.
Okay, what were they?
He was specific. He said Iran must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. And then, very clearly, they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Wow, okay. So that's quite a list. It's not just about the nuclear program then.
Not at all. It really digs into their regional activities, the proxy wars, sponsoring terror. It's comprehensive.
And considering, the whole history with the Iran negotiations, the JCPOA, the ongoing tensions, those conditions, they feel like a pretty tall order.
They absolutely do. It's a very strong stance. And these conditions, especially stopping the proxy wars, that directly challenges how Iran operates in the region, right?
Yeah, their whole strategy, really.
Exactly. So you'd expect significant pushback. It's asking for a fundamental change, not just tweaking the nuclear aspect.
Okay, so that's Iran. Let's pivot to the other big piece, the Abraham Accords. He seemed pretty positive about those, didn't he? Praising the UAE and Bahrain.
Oh, definitely. He highlighted their vision and courage for signing back in 2020.
And those original accords, just to remind everyone, were a huge deal. Brokered by the U.S., got the UAE and Bahrain to recognize Israel, establish full relations.
A massive shift. It was the first peace deal like that since Israel and Jordan way back in '94. It kind of sidestepped the whole Palestinian issue to focus on other shared interests, security, economy.
A real game changer. And it sounds like he wants to build on that.
He stated it pretty clearly. Quote, "In the future, we'll continue that progress by adding more countries to the Abraham Accords." So yeah, the intention is definitely expansion.
Actively looking for more countries to join.
Precisely. The first ones sort of provide a template, maybe some diplomatic momentum, but every country is different. Each potential new member has its own internal politics, its own history. It might get trickier than the first time around. It makes you wonder who might be next and what would it take?
Good question. And it all feels connected, doesn't it? Like, these things don't happen in a vacuum. His remarks also touched on Syria and Lebanon.
Right, and the timing there was interesting too.
And how so?
Well, these comments came just after he met with Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Shura, and it was only a day after the announcement about lifting sanctions on Syria.
Ah, okay. He actually said, Trump says he'll drop sanctions on Syria and move to normalized relations. That's quite a shift.
It is a notable shift, yeah. Lifting sanctions, you could read that a few ways. Maybe encouraging a different political path for Syria. Or perhaps it's part of a wider regional strategy adjustment. How do you see it fitting with the Iran and Accords goals?
Well, he didn't explicitly link them in the source, but you could, speculate maybe. Could it be about changing the overall dynamics? Creating space for other diplomatic moves?
Possibly. It's certainly something to watch.
And then there was Lebanon. He talked about Lebanon having a new chance for a future free from the grip of Hezbollah terrorists.
That was conditional, though, right?
Yes, conditional on the new leadership rebuilding an effective Lebanese state. But he sounded optimistic, calling it a once-in-a-generation opportunity for a peaceful, prosperous Lebanon.
That does sound optimistic, especially given Lebanon's, everything they've been through.
It is. And framing it as breaking free from Hezbollah, that suggests a desire for a more stable, maybe more Western-aligned Lebanon.
And how might that play into the bigger picture?
Well, a stable Lebanon would definitely contribute to a calmer region overall, wouldn't it? Which could, maybe indirectly, help create a better environment for both an Iran deal and expanding the Accords. It's all potentially linked.
So you've got these different pieces, Iran, the Accords, Syria, Lebanon, and it sounds like they all feed into this larger vision he laid out. Exactly. He talked about wanting to forge a Middle East that will be a thriving commercial, diplomatic, and cultural crossroads at the geographic center of the world. He really emphasized that idea of the region being the center of the world.
A grand vision. And just for context, he said all this while addressing the Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh, part of that 4-day trip.
Right, directly engaging with those key players. And he was heading to Qatar next, so more diplomacy on the agenda.
Okay, so let's try and sum up the key takeaways here. It feels like two main thrusts. First, aiming for an Iran deal, but, and it's a big but, only if those strict conditions on nukes and regional behavior are met.
Correct, very firm preconditions.
Second, a clear commitment to expand the Abraham Accords, bring more countries into normalized relations with Israel.
Building on that existing framework.
And alongside that, we see these moves related to Syria lifting sanctions and this hopeful language about Lebanon's future, potentially without Hezbollah's dominance.
Exactly. They're distinct initiatives, but you can see how they might interact or influence each other in reshaping, the whole geopolitical map of a really vital region.
And for you listening, keeping track of these goals, these first steps, it's pretty crucial for understanding where things might be heading in terms of, well, everything international relations, security, trade.
Absolutely. These are potentially major shifts we're talking about.
So here's something to think about maybe. Given how tough those conditions are for Iran and just how incredibly complex the Middle East always is, what do you think are the biggest roadblocks, but also maybe the biggest opportunities for actually achieving both things that Iran deal and a much wider Abraham Accords? It feels like walking a very fine line, doesn't it?